Good. Okay, so we're not recording. So hey, welcome to DTalk Webinar 2. This is, what day is today? May 27th, 2025. Yoo-hoo, nearly into June. So, Erika, if you're watching this recording, we're very sorry because we kind of started chatting before we pressed the recording button. So now we press the recording button and we're just going to catch up on the question by Morten. Right? Yeah. Martin, would you like to give your question again?
Yeah. I was just wondering about your Ole flower. You mentioned that it was revised recently, and I was just wondering if you had changed some of the petals, or what was the revision all about?
Yes, very good question, and I will try and remember exactly how it was. So, the flower itself. So the tool you have been working with or playing with, that is just totally new. We didn't have a flower before. We had an Excel that was kind of a bit just limited and regimented. But let's go to the principles. We did have 8 principles as well. The new principles that are now considered that weren't there in the previous version of the OLE principles is open and sustainable. Yeah. Why we brought those back in? Sustainable is in a way a direct. It's the impact of a direct response to the situation that we normally live as course designers, as course developers. And it is the fact that, yes, you start developing a course with a group of people, with a course team, the content expert, and they are very enthusiastic at the very beginning and they want to get the course off the ground. But once the course runs once, they just say, I don't want to. Not all of them, but most of them would say, you know what? I'm not necessarily going to be looking after this course. So that kind of puts us in a situation where we already have to think from the very beginning when we're designing a course that likely, it has to sustain itself or as easy as possible without the input of the original course team. So that was kind of the thinking behind adding sustainability as a principle. And then open, because even for the extension school, so we work, actually we're not called extension school. Anyway, we work for the extension school. The extension school, the mission of the extension school is to educate the world. The world, as I say, is not always inside edX only. And, the world is out there and the world is very big. So this idea of openness and sharing the knowledge with absolutely everyone was very much part of what we do, but it wasn't specified anywhere, as in how do we do that when we work on designing a course. So that was the idea of bringing in open.
And then we remove innovative.
We removed innovative and we removed accessible. Why?
Yeah.
We didn't actually remove accessible. We thought that it really came, once you talk about diverse and you talk about inclusive, then you were already kind of bringing in all this idea of accessibility. So that kind of merged into diverse and inclusive. Even flexibility also comes. Well, anyway, I'm not going to complicate it. And then actually innovative was a one.
Yeah, it was discussed, but it was difficult to I think to accept. No,
in a way,
we are innovative. Okay.
In a way, so what is innovation? So I just remember years ago when I went for a job interview somewhere, and one of the questions I got from the panel was, can you tell us an example of when you have been innovative? And I just said, okay, but I don't know how you do things. So if maybe the time I was using this type of discussion board that maybe they weren't using. So it's actually, how do you know that you're innovative? And what's innovative today is not innovative tomorrow anymore. So in a way, and it's not innovative. In a way, it's whether we like it or not, it's definitely linked to the use of the technology. The use of the technology, in my opinion, these days is it kind of one. You should not design according to the functionality of a particular technology. So you design first, and then you think of the technology that you want to use, and not the other way around. But then, for me, this idea of the technology is very much kind of they have and they have not. And if you have money, what can your university buy? And if you don't have money, what it is, what's free, what's available. So we get into such kind of, in a way, not necessarily shaky territory, but very difficult to define, very difficult to measure, very difficult to assess, and just too fluid to really kind of pinpoint it and say, yes, as a principle, we're going to be innovative.
Yeah, and again, it's related to others. So with engagement, it's like, we try to have innovative approaches, but we cannot guarantee. I think that in every round, we will have something completely different. So again, it goes against the sustainability. So it will be innovative once, but then in the second run, it's not innovative anymore. So we cannot guarantee all our courses every time will run in an innovative way, right? So in certain terms, we are innovative, but we cannot be innovative in every run.
Yeah. There's also kind of the innovation of the content. So you say, am I innovative because I've been working with the Faculty of Aerospace and they have come up with this brilliant idea to work towards sustainability and, how we can fly a plane without having an effect on climate change, So again, the idea is very innovative now, but it's not going to be innovative anymore next year if somebody comes up with something else. So it is very interesting. I don't know, maybe some other people who have done it, maybe you think actually, my set of principles, we would like to bring innovation back. I don't know. Do you miss, for example, not having innovation in there? Or is there something that you miss from those principles, do you think?
I think I will answer that question next time when I have a time to think about it.
No, but probably also will come with practice. If you continue using them later and you say, hey, yes, well, developing, so this question came up and I couldn't really fit it in one of the principles, but there was a good reflection behind it, so we would love to hear about it. We also started using it this year because last year was released, but we started applying, I think now, in the last and the most recent developments. So yes, we'll be happy to hear if any other conversation came up and it's not really covered by them. Because again, the idea is you bring the pedagogical model, so that's a framework that gives the quality and ensures the quality of your course, and in a practical way. Again, so this is that's why we emphasize this that much and that we put a lot of effort on making it practical in the course, because if not, we found out the last years it was really a formal moment where they were informed on the OLE principles and that's it.
Yeah, and in a way it's even, I think, a bit like, I was going to say riding a bicycle, but like anything else. So the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? And the more courses you see or the more conversations you have, then there's kind of, it's, you refine what you do, you stop doing something, you incorporate something else, which is kind of, so I confess I did not look at your assignments yet because of the computer issues that I had, but I will look in the coming days. But for me, always from the principle, it's yes, we do understand the principle, but even when we asked you to think of the particular actions that you're going to incorporate in order to make this principle a reality, even sometimes in there we still can go and kind of a deeper and make it even more concrete rather than. So the difficult thing for me is always go from the idea of the abstract to the concrete, as in. So in a way, that's what I will. But that's what I will be looking at when I look at your assignment from last week. As in, is that concrete enough, or are we still at the?
Well, we have good assignments, and they make concrete points. But of course, everything can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gave feedback already, so you can see.
So that's good.
there.
And so I was also thinking about the question you asked about innovative. You know, I think, I mean, you can have innovation in a lot of the other principles. So
exactly,
you know what I want to say? If to make it engaging a course, then you can think that maybe for that course you would need to have a very innovative way to present the material or whatever. So I think innovation, as you say, and there may be some courses they don't need innovation because I don't know, you're doing a basic calculus course, for example. Yeah, you can be innovative there, but then maybe you can find it in other areas to be innovative. If you want to be inclusive, maybe then you need to be innovative to be able to include certain type of students. So yeah, I think it's not necessarily something that need to be by itself a principle, but
it is true. Anyway, I mean, they word it. I don't know if we go into the semantics of the word innovation, but it's just to do something in a different way from what you did before. So, if in this particular course I'm using discussion forums to just discuss things, and then I don't do that anymore, or I use the discussion forums to ask for examples of different, ask for contributions from the learners, then I'm already innovating because I'm using the same tool in a different way, for example. So that also counts as innovation.
Yeah, and the other thing that there is a reason for redesigning. So when you see, for example, that learners' engagement is falling or is dropping, let's say, not within the run, but after a run, you say, hey, maybe it's time to redesign the course because, for example, we see now the trend after COVID, so people do not engage that much in discussions. Unless there is something different put there. No, it's not that just because, share your thoughts here. People don't. They don't share their thoughts because openly they want to share something. So yes, these kind of things, that is okay. How can we engage better? And you could do that in an innovative way, right? That then works and it's not innovative anymore, but after redesigning your course, it works fine until, the behavior of learners changes again and preferences, have to shape the way that you deliver the content, right?
Okay, good. Cool. Any more questions or?
One question. Do you now you're from the continuing education school at Delft, yeah?
We officially.
My question is this: do you use the flowers for full-time students or full-time degrees as well?
No. Yes and no. No, thank you for the question. The flower is as recent as 3 weeks ago. The flower we're using ourselves in this kind of. So do you mean like? Oh no, okay, no. Let me. So, is your question whether we use the kind of principles, the flower as in the principles, with campus education?
No, it's more that I've been involved in working with full-time degree students.
Yeah.
And it's somehow we kind of forget that there is a learner at the other end, because I mean this 5 ECTS course is part of a specific master program or something, and it's part of a bigger whole. But for lifelong learners, I mean, I shouldn't use the word, but they're kind of customers as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why the learner experience might be it's more of a focal point for lifelong learning courses than is the case for full-time degree students. I don't know.
That's very interesting. I don't know either. I don't think anyone. So the kind of conversation that we're having now with the OLE principles apply to designing an online course is actually as recent as. Okay, we started having the conversation last year, really.
Yeah.
The tool of the flower is completely new. That is just something totally new. The tool itself is open to everyone and anyone to use in a different way, right? But that's kind of the tool itself. So you can see if you go to to the tool, you will see how there's lots of other people already kind of using the tool itself to change whatever it is. Now, if your question is exactly if I get this correct, it's like, so what we are not doing. Okay, so this is interesting. You've been thinking and using the principles, and you have been using the tool as learners, because you're taking this course, which is about designing a course, right? I don't think what we could use, okay, this is a question. Could we use the learners? Because so far, you're the only learners using this tool, but you're using it as learners, but thinking of your role as designers. See what I mean? So we haven't asked you to reflect as learners on your own learning using these kind of principles. But that in itself would be very interesting, would it?
To ask the learners to...
Because then you're right. So it's very different. It's very different being, or is it very different being a campus learner? So a learner, so I'm a learner, I'm coming to university to get my degree. I can be older and younger, or thinking about lifelong learners, who in a way I kind of fit a different profile. So how they see their own learning is something that we haven't really asked them to do. See what I mean?
Vaguely. I'm trying to find an answer, but...
Yeah, no, it's because we haven't done it. So it's not, yeah. So you don't ask, I don't think we have asked, if that's where you're going, Morten, I don't think we have asked any learners to kind of reflect on their own learning
based on the flower.
Based on the principles.
Well, I have understood the flower as the one who's having the experience is the learner.
Okay.
Yeah. The online learning experience, not the online designing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The flower was designed for designers, providing a learning experience.
But yes. It's the designer designing the learning experience that they want the learners to have.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but then we connected. Okay, good question. So, if we connect, so do you think? So, have you changed because when you're doing the blueprint, we kind of had the big question. We've got learning objectives. We've got and we've got the personas.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have changed your flower if you have the two personas? One is a campus student and one is a lifelong learner.
So that when designing, you mean, well, that's what we'll do.
Actually, sorry. Yeah.
So we are going into that challenge next week about if the flower can apply, now that we are talking about customers and learners as customers, that we don't like to call them that way, right? Lifelong learners. But we are going to evaluate if the flower can be applied to other type of learning experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, campus education, it's another learning experience. Yeah. Even though we can say it's more traditional, or it was first, like before online, but the flower was designed for online learning. Yeah. In the future, maybe, Morten, you'll hear that it's not called online learning experience model anymore, because we were requested or suggested already to change it to remove online and to do it like universal. But our fear was, does this really represent any learning experience? Is it missing anything? Is it like some things might be optional? So we are in that challenge, if like this conversation is going towards that. And on Monday, we have the first discussion on how the rest of the team with different profiles and let's say different stakeholders see it. Because yes, we had first a request, change the title, and it was no, we can't. We have to evaluate. Right.
The only thing I was wondering now is, because now I was using the Oli principle and the flowers to start to design and not to think about what I want to develop. But I also think that if you use it by yourself, like we did, Morten and I, so then I think maybe the value of having a flower is also to have a discussion with a larger group. Because I think it's the opportunity to really think with other people what you want to do. Because if it's just yourself, you decide, okay, I want to have it very open, I want to have it very engaging, blah, blah, blah. You move your flowers and then, okay, you finish there, then you maybe adjust a little bit because you change your mind. But I think probably, I don't know, the importance of the flower in the design as a designing tool is in the conversation with others.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
otherwise
totally
it's a
agree
bit limit. I think that.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is, but it is what we say. So it's like we said, this is a conversation. So what the tool allows you to do is
to bring it up.
Visualize that's the end of the conversation in a way. I was using it with a course team this morning, and it is true that we were going with diverse. We kept going with the pedal up and down, because somebody says, "Oh, but we're gonna do this, right?" So then it went up, and they was said, "No, but actually we're gonna do that, and the other, or we're not gonna do this." So it kind of went down again, and it is true how. It's interesting to see how some of the petals, everybody agrees and say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be very open and just go straight up." But others just gonna keep going, because that's exactly the value. I don't think, this is what we still needs to be tested. I still think that there aren't two courses that are exactly the same in terms of the flower, in terms of the principles. So really, the value is indeed the conversation that you have.
And again, I think, sorry, Roberta.
No, so I think then going back to this, I think it can apply to different learners, and because it depends how you want to use it, but I think if it's an opportunity to discuss some important principle in your design, then because you have it in a conversation, then it probably can adapt to different format and different audience, I don't know, students on campus or lifelong learning, maybe, I don't know, but just wondering, maybe that's the case. But
exactly, because it's like bringing up the conversation, maybe other things comes up. Can also be that some of the petals are really small or they disappear, because that's the other thing, like, are we fine? Because now we ask, and also in your experience, so it's not that one petal was completely zero. No, but we have to see. So in the idea of products that or learning experiences that are in the business team.
But I wonder, is it also interesting in a way? This is amazing because you're just gonna make me think. So thank you guys. So last week, as in the module 1, right? You were introduced to the OLE principles. So the flower was already there. You already kind of work with the flower. And it is only this week when we introduce, or this module, when we introduce the whole blueprint. So the idea that you come up with your learning objectives, your question, and your personas, and then you bring in the flower so the flower is a conversation, in this case, a conversation that you had for yourselves when you were doing the thing. So now you just brought the flower and then you just put it there. So I just go back to my original question. Okay, not my original question, but does the order in which, so imagine that if you hadn't done the flower last week, so you do have the blueprint, so what was the order in which you kind of tackled the work? So did you start at the beginning saying, okay, so what's my course title? What's the big question? So you're thinking about that. And then you've got the flower and you've got the personas. So, okay, the learning objectives is the flower you did last week. So it was only a copy and paste job. Or did you change so did you change the flower from last week when you thought of your personas? No, exactly. See, but that's what Morten made me think, as in lifelong learners and or campus students, because the conversation I had this morning was, my campus students, so they come here because they want to learn, and their job is to learn. As a majority, I know there are different cases, right? If you think of a lifelong learning person, you're going to think, okay, so this is a professional maybe already working in this particular organization and they want to upskill, So this was in discussion with the open. So see, we we're kind of doing the two things at the same time because we didn't do a flower last week. So the idea was, so the conversation was, yeah, we're going to be super open. And then somebody said, yeah, but the usual thing, if we have a person in an organization, they're normally quite close because they're not happy sharing what they do when they apply. If they're applying things for real, they are not always that happy when you say, okay, let's be open and let's all share. In this case, what we were doing, sharing the blueprints, because then we can see everybody's exercises and we can comment. Actually, some particular organizations don't like that because they're not into sharing, because they can't share or because for whatever. So immediately it means that the petal came down thinking of the particular persona.
Yeah, but again, it's an iterative process, so it can change. It's not that you did it incorrectly because then you thought of your persona. So it can, and it will change later. So when you design and you have your storyboard finalized, then you are like, oh yeah, I should update my blueprint. And of course you can do, but it's also fine to leave it and say, yes, we reflected and this is something like we would like to do more, or now it's not possible anymore, or the interest of the. So if you are not the content expert and you are working with content experts, their ideas change. And they can adapt, but the essence should be the same. And sometimes it's good as a reminder, right? Because they promise something and then you start delivering or developing, and then some delivery or testing happens, and it's, oh yes, but it's not aligned with what you wanted to do at the beginning. Are we fine with this? Is this because the thoughts evolve into something else, or because we forgot? And this is super important for one of the topics that we have for today, that is the diversity and inclusion, because sometimes we say, oh yes, our course will be completely inclusive. We are designing for a diverse audience. They will be represented. And then in the rush of developing, we forget about these things, right? To have a diversity also on the cases, on the way we deliver the content, because we know behind the screens, there are learners that have different learning styles or preferences. And even though at the beginning was a nice thought to have, and there were actions or practical things decided or planned, then in the end they don't happen, right? Then it's time to pick them up again, or to discuss them at least.
Yeah. But then from a practical point of view, when you use the blueprint, I can imagine that from a learning designer point of view, it is a very nice tool that you want to use. But then you go in a course team that is very resistant, because as soon as they say the flower, they say, okay, blah, 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 blah. So how do you still manage to stick on using that and, in a positive way, in a course team that is maybe resistant to put on black and white these things?
Well, resistance, I haven't found. What I find sometimes people Morten, maybe you also can share your experience there. So sometimes when designing, what I find, people don't understand how it can be useful for them, right? So it's we have to fill in a template again, and it's not that. So generally what I do when I know it's a complicated profile I'm managing, so I just bring the conversation up. So, okay, today we are going to discuss the personas. So the personas, who is your learner, so we start doing the exercise, and then I fill in the blueprint, and at some point I show it. So this is all we reflected on the last couple of sessions. And then they, but this is we also design for this profile. Okay, so we add one persona, or we see how it matches. So it's a tool, and even though I introduce it, this is the tool we are going to use, but then if I see the resistance, I change my strategy, let's say, on how to approach the same task.
Exactly. So it's again going back to the same idea. It's not necessarily the template, it's not necessarily the flower, it's the conversation. It's the fact that you still need to put kind of cats up on the table, and move them from the idea that they come from at the very beginning is I say, well, I'm going to do a MOOC, so I just need to record videos and that's it. As in, no, so it's kind of the whole thing about.
Yeah, and another thing, for example, now I started development these last couple of weeks of 2 professional courses, and we are going to test how to work in an agile way, right? So we are planning sprints. So for those sprints, one of the requirements is to have, clear outcomes. So the templates in those cases are super useful because the templates are, so you have to put all your thoughts in the paper, no? Or in the template, let's say. And then for the review, so in the sprint review, you have the outcome to be reviewed and contrasted. In this case, they are developing 2 MOOCs that will be part of the program, so they develop together. So they will be evaluated by like the course team that is now formed by 4 people, no? including me. So we are working in sprints, and it's really nice to see like, okay, this week we work with the big question. And they were super into it. So for 1 hour we discussed. In the end we have 3. So we also did the program and 2 courses because it was so difficult for them. No, but we have so many things that we want to cover. Okay, then let's brainstorm concepts. Which concepts have to be part of your big question? And we had a list of 7 concepts. Oh no, but those are so many concepts. They don't fit. Okay, let's prioritize. So in this way, and in 1 hour, no, it was less because first we had like lunch, 45 minutes, let's say 40 minutes. So we had the questions. And then in the next sprint, so we start reflecting on the questions to the course titles days that they had an idea. So we'll just put them there and discuss. But then we move to the learning objectives, so this way.
So in a way, yes, we have a blueprint and there's a template and it's great. And as designers, we need to think about all these things. But I think one of the most important characteristics for a learning developer or instruction designer, what it is that you want to call us, is this ability to actually read the room, read the people you're working with, and then, become a chameleon and really help them help you to get wherever it is that you want to go. So they don't like the template. It's okay. I'm not going to force the template on you. I'm going to get that information out of you without necessarily showing you the template. Yeah. See what I mean? So that is what is so important. In a way, is that what I was kind of referring to at the very beginning when I was saying, there's a certain profile of academic that works at a technical university compared to somebody who teaches humanities, for example, who are much more into kind of telling this story and much more into, a different way of working, I think. But I think that is just super vital in your roles.
Yeah.
That you do not get, as learning developers, you need to be extremely flexible and have a very clear idea of. So they're the content experts. They know a lot and they're very good at their topic. You are very good at actually helping them tell that story online. So it's a way to not enforce anything on anybody, but being very precise about in your own head about the information that you need to get out of these people. Yeah. So if it goes nicely and everybody collaborates and then you can sit everybody in front of the blueprint and it comes out wonderful. Does that happen all the time? No. You know what I mean? So
no, that's why. And again, every time I introduce it, they are tools, and they are tools for designing a course and also communication tools. Because when you have a large course team, or let's say more than 2 people is already large for me. Yes, there are like good ideas, and while you go through the process, ideas like come in, come out, people forget. So then I also use the blueprint and the storyboard as communication tools.
Yeah.
So these were the ideas that were communicated at the beginning, and we agreed on those. So it's not that someone can come later and say, oh, no, I don't want to do this. It's like, no, but we agreed on that. And that's why we set this plan to do and to tell the story, right? And of course, it can change. It's not that it cannot, but it cannot be something that you continuously start all over again, no? Because that also happens with very, very, with people that don't have that much experience, let's say, designing online courses. So sometimes you start again and, why did we tell the story in this way? No, let's start again. And no, you will never finish. So if you review every time. So there are certain agreements and they were communicated. And and not within a university context, more NGO context that I worked before. It was every time I was talking to one expert, they wanted to retell the story. So yeah, that was something I encountered as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the flower. We've talked a bit about the personas. For me, the most important thing for the personas is because you kind of go back all the time to this persona and say, so if you're designing this particular assessment, for example, even if you give your persona a name, I just go for Margarita. So will Margarita be able to do this? What is she missing? We said that Margarita had this experience and this and that. So in a way that helps a lot with the course team to actually kind of, give this persona like a body in a way. I used to carry, at some point, the Margarita. So the personas that you have in the course, they belong to one of my courses. And I actually have them in the locker, and I can bring them out and say, hey, remember Margarita? Here it is. Okay, but I know we only have a few minutes. So what's your experience of, how do you find the quality of the learning objectives?
Sorry, can you repeat? I didn't understand what you say.
How do you find, so in terms of coming up with the learning objectives for your course, how do you find that? Was it difficult? Was it clear?
Not particularly difficult, but I think it will change along the way. That was my feeling, that I put down certain things, but I'm not sure they're going to stay there.
Okay. And you're not sure because they are too broad, or you are not sure what you want to?
Because maybe I'm still not so sure what I want out.
Okay.
So I should have thought longer. That's maybe the answer to the problem. I don't know, that was my feeling, but maybe it's also a question that one should reflect longer than what I did in this process, So at the level in which I did it, I wrote certain learning objectives, outcomes that I thought they were okay, but I feel that maybe they are not what will be there if I really had to design this course. Okay. Sorry, but that was my process, and the reality what happened while I'm doing it, while I did it. So I don't know, maybe Morten spent more time doing it better, thought better about it. I don't know. What's your experience?
I just have a question because I initially made quite a few learning objectives.
Yeah, I've seen.
And when I saw Roberta's and Erika's, I saw there were only 5 or 6, and I thought, maybe my learning objectives are not supposed to be for a course, but maybe just for let's say a video, for a 6 minutes video.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So what's your? How do you do that at Delft? Do you keep the learning objectives for the course at a quite general level, or how specific do you get? I stumbled upon a very interesting website from Delft about how to construct a learning objective, and that was just quite cool. Maybe I can.
Yeah.
Can I share it or?
Yeah. You can share it.
It is. Can you read? Oh. Can you see this?
No.
No.
Okay, hang on a second then.
Put it in it, yeah.
Let's try.
Or you can put it in the chat if it's a link, if you want.
It's this one.
Oh, no, yes.
Yeah. And yes, about
because these learning objectives, they get quite specific.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Because initially I had written something about engagement, that I wanted to support student engagement throughout the course, using the self-determination theory and Vincent Sinter's motivational framework. But then I showed it to my colleague, and she said, "Oh, this is too specific."
Exactly.
Just mention something about support engagement throughout the course. So what's your take on that?
For me, and again, like from experience here and my previous experience, especially my previous experience, so there was this discussion, how far do we have to draft, let's say, learning objectives? And there was this idea of over-informing learners, no? So I had a manager that was, do not over-inform our learners. Yeah. So for her, it was like, general learning objectives are fine. But then with time, I also discovered that sometimes my content experts were actually drafting activities. Mm-hmm. So you should distinguish if it's an activity or if it's a learning objective that implies and contemplates, let's say, skill behind the what they will do, right? Because sometimes if it's something complex like designing, yes, it's a learning objective, but if you ask to draw or sketch, it could be discussed if it's more into the action part, and then the design will be, the draft will be part of the design, so the design covers the sketching, you know? So I had this type of discussions a couple of times, and in the end, we decided not to be that, and my approach is always not to be that detailed. Another approach I had was that they really, really wanted to have all the learning objectives and learning objective slash activities. So what we did, so we had the course description page, let's call it about page, with the main learning objective, let's say the 6, because it was 6 modules, and they say, well, okay, one big learning objective per module. And then within each of the modules, we had 4 more for that particular module. Another approach was not to have per module, but to specify per unit. So within the module, each unit or each activity, because they had like, let's say, text, short video, and one activity, then per unit, they had one learning objective, and they inform it at the beginning. And they say, the learning objective of this unit is this. It will take you half an hour. And I don't know what else we informed. But this was something really, really, because the content experts wanted to have it as specific as possible, inform learners like to the detail, and we had that, right? What's best? I don't have a personal opinion.
I don't know, if you're at the beginning of the process, how can you be so specific? Because you don't, maybe you say designing a course, whatever course you are designing, but then, okay, how exactly you're going to do? Maybe you can identify some things that you really want them to learn or do. But then in the details, I think when you develop, then you think really about it. I don't know, but...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So from my side, you also kind of go as in, tell me what I'm going to learn, not necessarily tell me how I'm going to learn it. See, that's, for me, that's not how I'm going to learn it, should not be part of the learning objective. So for me, I like to think as a learner. So if I read information, so it is true that this set of learning objectives, 5, 6 learning objectives in a way, it's like what I'm going to need at the top level. So from our side, if I read information about this course, do I want to actually take this course? So do I have enough information there to actually take this course, right? So anyway, the question I like to ask course teams is, as a learner, so how am I different from the minute I come in through the door, as in at the very beginning, and at the end, what do I know at the end that I didn't know at the beginning, right? So for me, that kind of works out as that ends up being the learning objective. But also you can think about, you can connect it to the big question. So there is this big question, but the big question, the big umbrella question, actually you can divide it into smaller questions. So this big question, so I know that if I want to know about X, okay, so then I first need to know about this or this. So if from your big question, you can actually, you could very easily there's your big question, but this big umbrella question brings in, there's another 4 smaller questions, and pretty much, I bet you, that these smaller questions could actually be broken into smaller questions. So for each of those, you can go a level, like another level down. So the questions you have at the below the big umbrella questions, those would be your learning objectives. So you don't necessarily need to kind of go further down, in my opinion.
But again, yes, I think both are valid, Morten. So I have to have a look at yours, because yesterday when I checked, you had the one list, and then today I saw there was another list. So there are even more. Like, good. I think it's a matter of, again, I take this from my previous experience, so not over-informing, because it can be confusing. And in the end, the learner might get the perception that this course is going to take so long, no? And another thing that can happen, that you are designing more than one course. That's another thing. So if it's a really, really...
Well, then, because we start with the learning objectives, obviously, at the beginning, if you actually give yourself 2 detailed learning objectives as you're storyboarding, then you may end up not doing the things that you wanted to do at the very beginning. See what I mean? So you will go back to your learning objectives and revise them. Because you said,
but let's have a look at what you put there. So again, for me, it's more like maybe you want to really have that level of detail, and I think it's valid. So after designing that experience, I was, okay, yes, so it was for volunteers, so, okay, they want to take only maybe a couple of units. That's the other thing. Like, you are designing modular learning, so maybe it's useful for them to have that detail. And then I understood, okay, that's fine. They don't do like all together. They just take the units that they need. Fine. So it's okay because of that. But let's have a look at what you have. Give us a couple of days to look at it. And we ran out of time.
Okay. Do you have another question? We know there is a question on the forum for the retrospective, so we'll
reply there. But you have a point, because it's called retrospective. But what we were chatting, I said, true, it's a retrospective. But when designing, again, especially in an agile environment, so you go back to what you just designed. You test all the way. Let's say you review what you did. So in this case, it's more reviewing, as we mentioned all the time, like, in our previous lives, etc., previous experiences. So also from your experience when designing, do you feel there was a lack of certain things that you would like to include? So, or I would like to keep going and keep doing, for example, not only having videos, but also including audio or having podcasts. No, or it's something that it didn't really affect the learning experience, no, in the diversity side. But more reflecting on your experience, let's say, as a designer. And of course, I think it makes sense to have this exercise as well when evaluating your experience in the end. But in this case, yes, we wanted just to bring another tool for you to have later. But at this point, yes, the invitation is to reflect on your experience as a designer or as an online learner. What have you seen that worked? And you said, I would really like to do this, even though sometimes it's not possible technically. But at this stage, yes, we don't work like with the platform, so we are still defining things. Or things that you think don't work at all, so they are counterproductive.
But your question is actually spot on, in a sense that it is retrospective. So it is retrospective. You need to have done it in order to...
Or done something. Again, it could be reflecting on one sprint. Exactly. Until now, we don't have content yet. Yeah.
But in a way, it's for us to... It's another way for us to kind of get you to do something in a different way. So, hey, we innovated. Each week, those conversations cannot happen. So last week we said to you, okay, write your post, end your post with a question to your peers, right? So that's a way of kind of working on engagement. This is a completely different technique in terms of helping reflection as well, that can be applied to anything else, really. So
good. Let me stop the recording.
Stop.
Thanks for watching.